Okay, so in this one, I'm going to go over basically how to assemble, and we're going to start with that stool. So all the components that you guys have there, um, you have to make those components that I put in the stream. So you'll need one leg, one member, and one seat, based on those drawings. All pretty simple. So this screen we're familiar with, but instead of going to part like we've been doing, we're going to go to assembly now. It's going to load up. The screen's going to look very, very similar to what we have normally. You're going to have all your stuff up here is going to be a little bit different, but you can see your tabs are going to be very, very similar to what you have before, but a little bit different. So first thing we're going to want to do is place. And I'm going to want to place a part. I have to go find mine. They're down here. First, I'm going to do the cross member, which is one that looks like this, has that big lap joint in the middle. I'm going to open it up, zoom out a bit so I can see everything, and it's kind of shaded out as you can see. And with this one, the first one you bring in, I'm going to right click. I'm going to say I want to place grounded at origin. And in assembly, you have to have something that's grounded, which means it won't move. It can't be moved around. I'm going to put another one over here. I'm going to right click and say, okay, that's all I want to do for now. Okay, readjust our screen. We can test this out by saying, okay, you can see this one right here has a little pin on it. That one is locked into place. It's not going anywhere. It's got this little push pin on here. This one, however, you can see I can move in all three dimensions. Okay, so these are three-dimensional objects. There's three dimensions in here. Whether right now we're in an isometric view, so we really can't tell where we're putting stuff, but I'll show you in a second. First, we have to put some constraints on this piece to make it lock into this piece to have it like form like an X. So to do that, we're going to use constraints. Constraints are very similar to what we do in 2D when we're making our tangents and things like that. We've got all different types of mates and constraints up here. We have regular mates and we have flush. Mate just means they're touching in opposing sides, kind of like that. Flush means they're lined up with one another. So for this one, I'm going to have this surface and that surface. I want them mated like this. And you can hear a little indicator go off and say, okay. Now it looks like they're right on top of each other, but if I grab this one, I can now move it out of the way. Now it looks kind of like all it did was flip it over. However, if I look actually in a plane, you can see now that it's locked in to that plane. Okay, since it's a three-dimensional object, we locked in one plane. We've got three other planes that we're going to have to lock this thing into. Okay, so next I'm going to constrain it again, but this time I'm going to say I want this plane over here or this face over here, and I want it to be touching or mated with this plane over here. Say okay. Get this back to here. Now you can see it's locked into two planes. I can now only move it back and forth because I locked it into this face and I locked it into these two faces here. Now I've only got one left. Kind of move this out of my way, and I want to do a constrain with this inside face here and with this face over there and say okay. Now I've got all those pieces locked. They're not moving or going anywhere. Now I'm going to bring in my legs. Go around here and find. That's why it's a good idea to have your stuff saved in a folder somewhere, and I want to bring in some legs. So open up. I'm just going to place these. These aren't getting locked because I already have pieces locked into place. Say okay. So for this one, I'm going to start again with a mate constraint. And I'm going to get this guy back here lined up with this face here. Say okay. OK gets you out of the command. You can click on apply and then keep constraining if you want. You can see, looks like it's still moving around, but if we change our viewpoint here, you can see, nope, it's locked into right there. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to do a constraint. I want this side of this leg to this side, but I don't want them mated. I want them flush like that so they line up with each other. See, okay, now you can see I've got locked into those two. So each of these pieces is essentially going to get three constraints put put on it for the 3 dimensions of the object. That's how kind of Inventor works a little bit. So now that leg's in place. Okay. Now I'm very quickly going to do the same thing to these. You guys can kind of sort of follow along. I'll explain anything that kind of needs to be explained. But on this one, it's just pretty much repetitive that we're doing this over and over again. This is going to get a flush here. And then I can do the bottom of that one. Why is this guy still moving? Okay, there we go. Now these aren't facing this direction, so that you should watch how I do this. Still going to put this one onto that one like we were doing. That one actually flipped around. Okay. Sometimes they don't. People get really confused. You just have to be sure you're aligning proper faces. Top of this one, top of that one. Okay. Locked in. Let's see now. This one, I'm going to flush first. I'll do this side with, I want it to be facing that direction. So I want to say that. Oops. I'm moving them so I can get into the positions of the faces to select these faces easier. That's why I always move them around. Okay, so there's my cross members and my legs. Now I just need to place the, down here somewhere, seat. Okay, so these will be able to move around too. Pretty cut and dry. We're going to do the top and top, but I want them to be flush. Like that. Okay, now these cutoff edges here, these cutoff edges here, they're the ones that align with these. So I want this one to meet up with like that right there. So, okay. Now it kind of moves around a little bit. I just need to lock one more, and that's like opposing. So like this one and this one, or this one over here. Just meet these together. Pretty simple stuff once you get the hang of it. There we go. There's a fully constrained and assembled stool. I want to change some material on some stuff to make it actually look like our stool. We can go down here and find there, yellow pine, and it actually now looks like a stool. So that is how you bring in all your pieces. That's how you fully assemble all these parts. Be sure you're using the right size seat. Looks like I'm not using the right one. We kind of talked about that in class. The one that's on there should be updated to fill in that gap. But that is how we assemble using Inventor Assembly.